Hello, hello, everyone out there. Happy Thursday night here. If you're watching us live, it is 6 p.m. on the West Coast, Pacific Daylight Time. And if you are watching live, please feel free to jump on the comments here and ask any questions that you have for our Oxnard Police Department Traffic Unit officers. We have Officer Wood and Officer Songer with us this evening. My name is Paul Carganilla. I'm the Community Affairs Manager for the Oxnard Police Department, and we are coming at you live from the police station downtown in the beautiful city of Oxnard on a beautiful evening. Officer Songer, I thought you were going to bring us in with some fun music.
Well, it's coming in right now.
There it is. Which way are we going? I can't tell.
I feel like I'm going to the left, but I might be going to the right.
That's just a little opening choreography for you at home. I hope you enjoyed that little bit of fun.
I'm not going to quit my day job.
But yeah, we've been trying to find new ways in this crazy pandemic to connect with our community, and thankfully through these Zoom conferencing and these Google meetings, we can still hold meetings, we can still reach out and connect with everybody in our community, and we love doing it. We've been doing it pretty regularly here weekly on the Oxnard Police Department Facebook page, and this week, as I mentioned earlier, I'm so excited and happy to welcome Officer Michael Wood and Officer Justin Songer. They are members of the traffic unit. And so before we dig into any of these live questions on Facebook for these wonderful men, I'm going to let them introduce themselves. And we'll start, since you're in the top left of my screen that I'm seeing, Officer Wood. We'll start with you. Officer Wood, tell us about your foray into law enforcement.
Well, good evening, Oxnard. Thanks, Paul, very much. My name is Mike Wood. I am currently a traffic officer with Oxnard PD's traffic unit. I'm currently one of the motor officers, so I ride a cool motorcycle, and I've been doing that for quite a while now. I have been with Oxnard PD. I started back in 2005 as a reserve officer, so I was actually doing it on a voluntary basis while I worked for another agency as a civilian position. I was picked up as a police officer in 2007, and I worked patrol for a while and had a blast with that. I was a field training officer. I had a chance to train some new officers. I worked down in one of our storefronts as one of the district officers down our south end, formerly known as District Number 4. Now it's now known as the South End District. Back in 2014, excuse me, I was picked up and was selected to be amongst one of our elite units, which is the traffic unit, where I went through motor school, and I'm sure I'll probably talk about that in a little while. Currently been assigned since 2014, so about almost 6 years on the bike now, and currently I'm assigned as the motor officer for the north end of our district. So I have everything kind of mostly Gonzales North or Doris North is the north end district, and I oversee a lot of the traffic problems over there. Kind of within my assignment, we do a multitude of functions. I'm currently one of the investigators, like Officer Songer is going to talk about. Currently one of our traffic investigators, so I investigate serious and fatal traffic collisions. I'm one of our DUI officers, so I go out weekends and meet and greet some interesting folk who make the wrong decision to drive impaired on our roadways. I'm one of what they call a DRE, which Officer Songer will go into here in a minute. And I do a whole bunch of other things. I currently run and oversee our Start Smart program for teen drivers. What they call a RAD instructor, which is a rape aggression defense, where I teach self-defense to some of our victims to help them feel more empowered. I do a whole bunch of things with the department and with our community. Justin?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Justin Songer. I've been with the Oxnard Police Department since January of 2012. When I started here at the police department, I started in a temporary position in our property unit as a property and evidence technician. A few months later, I was lucky enough to be hired on in our traffic division as a traffic service assistant. Some of the most kind people in the city of Oxnard driving around in our pickup trucks. I did that position for about a year, and then I was fortunate enough to be selected to go to the academy as a police officer. So I've been a sworn officer, police officer with our department for about 6.5, going on 7 years now. Did the first 2.5 years in patrol. the traffic unit has always been something that's been very important to me, being that I worked as a civilian within the traffic unit. And so I put in for the traffic unit when there was a motor officer position available. I tested for the position, and I was fortunate enough to be selected for the position. So it was a good transition for me. I've kind of grown up riding motorcycles, and so it's a great time, great opportunity to get out, be in the public, and do your job as a police officer. Since I've been in the traffic unit for about the last 4 years now, I've had the opportunity to do a number of different assignments and responsibilities within the unit. Just like Officer Wood, I am one of the officers that investigates serious injury and fatal traffic collisions in the city of Oxnard. Specifically, I have training in traffic collision reconstruction, which uses a number of different disciplines, physics, certain mathematics, to reconstruct traffic collisions to kind of help investigators get a better idea of how the collision occurred, so we can kind of solve these cases and these crimes. I'm also a drug recognition expert instructor. Just like Officer Wood, as a drug recognition expert, we have somewhere in the neighborhood of 250, 300 hours of training in just drug impairment and influence. And so I teach that as well to not only our department, but other departments, throughout the United States. So it's been a great opportunity. I'm responsible for our District 3 in the city of Oxnard. So that encompasses Colonia, the Cal Giesler neighborhood, Lemonwood, basically anything south of Gonzales Road, east of Oxnard Boulevard, and north of Channel Islands Boulevard in our city. So myself and another motor officer were responsible for complaints specifically within that neighborhood. However, we are free to go throughout the city to address certain traffic issues there. So again, it's a great time. Glad to be here, and hopefully we can get some good questions coming, and Officer Wood and I can take those head on.
I love this because I can just like give you guys the show and walk. I could just walk away. I didn't even have to introduce Officer Songer. You guys are taking care of that. And I loved how much Mike just put on your plate there as he.
Yeah, I know. I had to
And Paul,
Wikipedia some of that stuff, but I was able to get it down pretty quick, so we're good.
and you can give some of that chocolate too, Paul, behind you. There's like 18 boxes.
Very generous donation. But I just wanted to find out from you guys, because I don't exactly know. But before I do, I just want to remind everybody who's at home watching. Looks like we got about 100 people watching. That's great. If you have any questions for our traffic officers here, they can answer any normal patrol officer questions. As they mentioned, they've experienced doing that, or anything specifically traffic related. These are a couple of our just experts in the field, literally. So I want to invite you to go ahead and throw those questions up on the live Facebook chat if you are watching, and it is actually live. Sometimes people watch it later and they think it's live, but we're not live anymore. It is now 6:09 p.m. So if you're watching at this time, go ahead and throw a question out there. Officer Wood or Songer, for either of you, what is the process of going from a patrol officer in getting into the traffic unit? What is involved in making that transition?
I'll just start off real briefly. I'll have my partner here answer the rest of it. The beginning part of it, so any collateral assignment at our agency, you have to have a minimum of 2 years of law enforcement experience, with at least one of those being at Oxnard PD. So if you have a couple years on as a patrol officer, you can put in for a collateral assignment, collateral meaning like traffic or schools, detective stuff like that. What happens is they put out a flyer saying, hey, we have an opening in traffic. You apply for it. You have to submit various materials. You will go through an interview process. And for instance, when I went through interview process, I went against about, I think like 6 or 8 other people at the time. After the oral panel, you have to go through it's kind of a weird kind of physical process. They took me outside and literally gently laid over one of our motorcycles, and those weigh up to almost 600 pounds sometimes. And you have to lift the bike up, and you have to demonstrate by holding the bike upright and walking it backwards, walking it forwards. They show you how to pick up the bike 3 different ways. They show you how to mount and dismount. After you can demonstrate that and you can pass that, and you get rated, you could be selected to become a motor officer, in which you go through motor school. And so, Justin, you want to talk about the process of motor school, since we have one going on right now?
Yeah, so like Officer Wood said, I kind of just want to touch on that just for a second. Um, you know, any position within the police department, whether it be the motor position, a detective assignment, it's always a good idea for our officers who have an interest in furthering their career and doing something outside of patrol, to try to seek out as much training as possible before they do that, or try to spend time with the unit to get to understand that. So I think that's one of the important aspects that I know Officer Wood and myself as well included try to do prior to applying for the unit. As far as the motor school's concerned, currently we're doing an in-house motor school, which is where we have certified motorcycle instructors teaching the newly selected officers into our unit how to ride a motorcycle and how to ride a motorcycle as a police officer. When I went through, we did a 2-week in-house pre-academy where we got familiarized and comfortable with the BMW motorcycles that we ride. And then after that, I went to a 2-week motorcycle school put on by the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Office in San Bernardino County. And I kind of alluded to it earlier. I'd grown up riding motorcycles from dirt, street to track riding. And I was very confident on the motorcycle prior to getting on the motorcycle for the police department. But it kind of opened up my eyes to it's a completely different type of riding than what I was used to as well. So it was an eye opener for sure. But it's definitely great times being on the bike, being able to be out in the community and have either what little hair I have in my head or my mustache hair be flapping in the wind as we're riding down the road. So it's a good time.
We do have some questions coming in about those mustaches, so you guys get ready for that. What are your traffic shifts like? I know it's different than from patrol. What kind of shift work do you guys have?
So we generally focus around our collision times. Sometimes we'll have motor officers come in at 8:30 in the morning. Some will come in at 7:30. During some peak season times, we'll actually have 2 different officers that are assigned as what we call night motors. For instance, last year alone, we had 2 officers, Officer Manuel Perez III and Officer Phil Flores, who are nighttime motors, and their job not only was focusing on reducing traffic collisions, but also as DUI impairment arrests and enforcement. And those 2 alone together actually each one of them made 129 DUI arrests last year. And that's DUI drugs and DUI alcohol with alcohol combinations as well. That's a phenomenal number.
Yeah. And tell us about the checkpoints. I know you guys do those sometimes. Are they regular? Well, just how do you determine when you're going to have those or where? I know we see the press releases go out ahead of time. So many people are like, well, why would you put the word out ahead of time? What's the point of that? You're not going to catch anybody that way. So just general info on those checkpoints.
Yeah, with the checkpoints, the locations are selected due to a number of different factors. Some of them can be areas or locations that have a high prevalence rate in DUI, either arrests or collisions involving DUI. So typically those involve our main thoroughfares throughout the city. As far as the frequency of how often we have them, we try to do somewhere in the neighborhood of 12 to 16 a year. I think typically we hover around that 14 number. And they're usually on either a Friday or Saturday evening. The reason we broadcast them ahead of time is because the whole component behind a DUI checkpoint is education. And although enforcement does happen when someone comes into the checkpoint who may be impaired, whether they had too much to drink or they had some sort of drug in their system that's affecting their ability to drive, then there is an enforcement aspect attached to that. But the main goal behind it is to educate the public. And by us being out there in the streets, the idea is, and hopefully that people who come through, they can get some information from us. We hand out flyers, but also, being visible within the community, community members are able to see us out in the streets and understand that, hey, if I drive while impaired, there's a chance and a high likelihood that I'll be arrested.
Officer Wood, anything to add?
No, Justin really hit it on the head with that. I, I, Justin and I are very passionate about DUI arrests and education with impairment. He and I are instructors with our standard, what we call standard field sobriety testing classes, and we reach out to other agencies and work collaboratively to put on classes to our new officers. It's something we've been doing for a few years now. Any new officer that comes into our agency with the past, what Justin, 3 years now, they go through our class where we teach them not just basic but advanced DUI detection. So they cut through, and Justin is now an instructor for our most advanced classes, such as DRE, drug recognition expert, and A-RIDE. A-RIDE has to do with pharmaceutical drug abuse and introduction to all the other drug driving. This is advanced training that our newer officers are getting, and we're building a good platform with their training.
And you both mentioned earlier the traffic collision investigations. When do you get called out for every? Because I know working having previously worked in dispatch, that people believe, if there's a car accident, and not everybody believes, but some people believe if you're in a car accident, you call the police, and then the police come out and investigate and tell your insurance company whose fault it was. That's not the case, correct? And at what point, what does it take to get, or what are the parameters in which you guys are called out to investigate a specific collision?
Well, I'm going to talk about the non-injury collisions, and I'll let Justin talk about the serious and fatal stuff. That's kind of more, he's got a lot more forte with that as well. As far as non-injury go, and I teach this in my Star Smart classes, non-injury traffic collision, or what we know as property damage collisions, if you get involved in one, like a fender bender, anything that's just real minor, no injuries, no hit and run, just pull off to the side of the road. All you have to do is exchange information, the magic 3, license, registration, insurance. And back when I was a novice driver, my parents put in my glove box a piece of paper and a pen. And I was told, and I see Justin smirking already, and I was told that if I get into any kind of a traffic crash of any sort, hey, write down all this information. And now it's a little bit different. We have higher technology that if you get into a fender bender, bring out your smartphone with a camera on it and start taking photos of all the other person's documents. I tell people is lay out everything on the hood of the car, take a picture of the license, registration, insurance, write down their phone number, and you've satisfied all the requirements that you need. All you have to do with that information now is give it to your insurance company, and just basically it's an exchange of information. We currently have we have several what they call traffic service assistants. They're the people that drive around in the trucks. They wear a light blue shirt. They're an incredible position with our department or agency as well as the community. They do a huge and important job behind the scenes. They're probably the best logistics I can think of, especially with traffic. I really am thankful for them, because what they do is they go out, and not only do they do enforcement by street sweeping and time parking and abandoned vehicles, but they also respond out there and help people exchange information. Even though we don't take reports for them, we don't point fingers at people saying, hey, you're at fault. We don't do anything like that. But what we do is we will help you exchange information to make sure you have all the proper info, whether it's done over the phone or through 911. We can give you some advice on how to do that. So it's pretty basic. As far as on call, and I'll tie it over to Justin here in a second, we always have traffic investigators that are on call that are ready to go out at a moment's notice. And that comes into play several times a year, as we do and have been recognized as having one of the higher traffic collision related problems in the county of Ventura and the state of California as well.
Yeah, so as far as the traffic collision investigations and traffic officers being mobilized on call, how that works is typically if we are not working, we're at home, or if we even are working, we won't be activated for a collision unless that collision rises to a certain level of severity. And that is generally a major injury collision or fatal traffic collision, or certain collisions involving police personnel. When we come out to a traffic collision, the investigation is a little bit different than a patrol officer would handle the investigation. One, because we have more training, we have more tools, and we actually have more time and resources to dedicate to the investigation. We have a call-out van. It's a white van, says police on the side, that carries all of our traffic collision investigative equipment, and that's a huge asset to us. So when we come to a scene as traffic officers, generally patrol officers are already on scene, and involved parties have either been treated by emergency medical services or transported to hospitals if they have injuries that warrant current medical treatment. And then from that, the investigation really kind of slows down for us, because we have to be very meticulous about how we not only begin the investigation, but how we process the scene. And some of the things that we look for while investigating these types of collisions are tire friction marks, commonly referred to as skid marks. So we will evaluate the roadway surface to see if we can see any sort of tire friction marks involved in the collision. We look for things such as gouge marks or scrape marks, which can be indicative of vehicles or objects involved in the collision and now making contact with the roadway. So sometimes vehicles will come and they'll hit, and when they collide together, there's a terminology called maximum engagement. That's where the two vehicles, assuming two vehicles are involved, they've collided and they've engaged to their maximum, the maximum amount that they're going to engage for that collision. Well, we'll look for marks like that. And then as far as the reconstruction goes, we basically work the collision back from zero. And the 0 point for us is once all the vehicles and all the people involved and everything like that has come to rest. The scene has stabilized, vehicles are now stopped, the people are stopped, and then we work it back from that point using physical evidence, as well as witness statements, driver statements if we have them, camera evidence, video evidence, and we work that back so we can identify how the collision occurred. I know a lot of people think it's just a traffic collision. It's pretty cut and dry, but it's really not. As far as the criminal side of things for a traffic collision investigation, we have to look at it through a microscope, for lack of a better analogy. We need to identify if a crime has been committed, and on a very basic level, if a vehicle code violation has been committed, such as an infraction, by virtue, a crime has been committed. However, we look into that much deeper, and we look if someone is negligent. And the certain terminology we look for is if someone is grossly negligent by their actions. And if it gets severe enough, we look to see if there has been some sort of implied malice that's been contributed to this person's behavior, which caused this collision. So, to investigate traffic collisions that at times people are charged with murder charges. So they can range from non-injury to all the way fatal injuries resulting in murder charges.
Wow. So just to recap, if I'm in a traffic collision and there's no injuries, Officer Wood.
Once again, if you're involved like in a non-injury crash, move off safely to the side of the road. Several people want to stick in the side of the road or on the middle of the street and wait for us. Please move off the side of the road safely. Exchange information with the other driver. You do not need to call 911 if there's no injuries, if there's no hit and run component or DUI. If it's just a basic fender bender, property damage kind of case, move off the side of the road, exchange information, give it to your insurance company, and you're good to go.
All right. Wonderful. Thank you. All right. We got about 5 minutes left. I bet we can get to these questions from the audience at home, everybody watching on Facebook. Thank you. The first one I'm going to go ahead and address is from Stephanie. It's our mustache is a prerequisite to becoming a traffic officer.
Clearly not. If I'm a traffic officer, I've been growing this thing for a few years. So if you would have seen me probably the first 6 months or year into it, you would have thought it was dirt on my lips. So I would say no on that one.
Oscar asks, do your call signs ever change, and how are those determined?
We are known as the TOM units, which is traffic, and they are based upon seniority levels, where our most senior officers are TOM 1 and TOM 2, and it trickles all the way on down to a higher number. So if another motor officer leaves and they're higher than you, then you take on their call sign as a sign of respect, and you keep that call sign until you move up to another spot.
Gotcha. Miguel Moran asks, what's the biggest difference from being a traffic officer as being on patrol?
I would say, in my opinion, riding the motorcycle. I mean, obviously the duties change. The stuff that we do, patrol officers also do as well. They respond to these collisions. They conduct the DUI investigations. They conduct, enforcement on unsafe driving. But really being able to be out there and be on that motorcycle for me is the biggest difference.
Another thing also, Paul, is the availability and readiness. Motor officers are out there, and we can get to scenes quicker. This played out as a great example when we had a school shooting last year in the west end of our city, and motor officers were amongst the first ones there, ready to go. In fact, I think Justin and I were on the entry team in that one. It's a great skill and great mindset to have, and we do more than just write tickets and DUIs, even though I really do love writing tickets and DUIs. But we do respond to hot calls, and every day it's something random and new every single day.
It's exciting adventure. Some of these questions are for the city and the traffic engineer, so I won't go into those. But Ava would like to know, how fast does a motorcycle go?
I believe 65 miles an hour is the top speed on those bad boys. The current bikes that we're riding, Mike is gracious enough to have one of the brand new bikes we got in. They're very high performing machines. Obviously, they're kind of a utility piece of equipment in that they carry a lot of our equipment, but they're also pretty high performing machines. I would say, easily in excess of 120 miles an hour, 130 miles an hour.
So, long story short, if I'm going 100, you're still going to catch me.
Likely so, yeah. And usually we work in at least pairs, so we got someone else in the area too.
Yeah, you probably remember that Facebook post, Paul, a few weeks ago. We had Justin, a Ferrari or Corvette? I think it was one of those two. It was going northbound on Victoria, and Justin had it at 95. Unfortunately, even though the bikes go pretty fast, you really can't beat the speed of a radio. So Justin reached out to me pretty quick, and we had that car stopped pretty fast as well. So that was without going in pursuit or going too fast.
Nice.
So that was not a good ending to that.
Very good. So you guys generally work in pairs. So that's teamwork right there.
Absolutely.
Love it. Pam, one of our wonderful TSAs, would like to remind everyone when street sweeping start.
I believe it started this week. I've been out of the office, unfortunately. So, Mike, do you know?
It starts, I believe they're doing warnings right now, and I want to say in a couple weeks or a week or so. I would pay attention to the social media, to our social media outlets on that one as far as when it actually starts. I know they put something out recently that a cool warning ticket. I know the TSAs are giving warnings and highlighting them as well to help people. And I know today, I don't know the exact number, but I know today several warnings were given out of people who were in violation of the street sweeping section. So get that rhythm back in, pay attention to our street sweeping routes, the signs, and know when you can't park there so you can avoid that ticket.
I am going to look that up for you because we did have a lot of questions about, hey, I'm getting a citation and it says citations don't start till the 20th. And that's true. Citations do not start till the 20th, but our TSAs have been out there issuing warnings just to let everybody know that street sweeping citations do begin on the 20th of this month.
That's your question, Paul. It's the 20th of this month.
It is the 20th of this month. Thank you. Grayson would like to know, how much does the uniform weigh?
It depends on the rider. That's a great question, Grayson. We're currently motor officers. Now, when I first started, and Justin started around the same time, we had the old motor boots that went up to your thigh. We had the motor breeches, and we wore the wool shirts. We have since transitioned over to what is known as the motorport pants. I believe they're Justin, dual Kevlar mesh type of fabric. And basically the bottom line is it's safety. A little heavier, they breathe a little bit more, but the best part is it'll help the rider in case something else tragically happens, they go down. It should provide better protection and coverage for them. And we wear special riding boots that help you with your shifting as well as braking.
Very cool. Julie wants to know, what do you do when you get in a fender bender and the other party does not have information?
At that point in time, it may be appropriate to contact the police department, whether they're not willing to exchange information with you, or if someone doesn't have insurance or a driver's license, anything of that nature. Contact the police department. What will happen is an officer will come out. They will check to see if the person is properly insured and licensed. And if they're not, an appropriate citation will be issued, and generally they'll help exchange or facilitate that exchange of information for you.
I'm going to throw this one directly at Mr. Wood from Carrie. Can you please discuss the 311 app?
That's a great one, Carrie. The 311 app has been around for a few years now, and it's basically something from your smartphone that is managed by the city and allows you to report numerous different things: graffiti, abatement issues, parking violations, traffic issues, a whole bunch of stuff. You can upload photos, you can write a description. The benefit to that is you actually can see the results. I've taken and seen several people that call in routinely, and they'll say, "Hey, I've called the hotline number for an abandoned vehicle, and I don't know what's going on with that." The 311 app is something where one of our awesome TSAs and CSOs respond, and they'll take a look into, let's say it's an abandoned car for 72 hours. They'll go out there and tag the car, and if it moves, it moves. If it doesn't move, it might get towed or a citation. But the benefit is overall is the person who handles that problem gives you a response, and you actually get to know what happened to that. And that's good community-based policing as well as good communication. So you kind of get that feel-good response, that I called and it was handled. That problem was handled.
And I will add on to that, since I did work in dispatch, when people would call in with like illegal dumping issues or graffiti or abandoned vehicles, I would take their information and put it into the 311 app, because that's the best way to report it. And like Officer Wood just said, you get updates once they receive it, once they go out there, and what happened when they got there, which is super, super cool and super helpful. We've just got a couple more here. Oscar asks, are traffic officers always on a motorcycle?
Well,
go ahead, Mike.
So well, when it rains, I wouldn't say I would melt, but we do typically ride motorcycles. They are our office. I practically live out of mine. If I were to open up my saddlebags for you, it's like going to the Beyond section of Bed Bath & Beyond. I have several things in there, but that's my office. That's where I live out of. And we do, from time to time, will work other assignments. We've been helping out with our patrol division the past few months, where we traded 2 wheels in for 4, and we will drive a car. It feels very different. I feel like I'm wearing my helmet half the time, but we do different assignments that we have to adapt and try to something else.
All right. Now, as I mentioned, a lot of these questions that are coming in are need to be addressed by either the city or the city traffic engineers about like stoplights and signage and things like that. So if you are asking those questions, those aren't necessarily questions that our traffic officers can answer, but if you contact the city, they might have better answers for you, or I'm sure they would love to hear the feedback on these areas that you feel need better signage or differently timed lights. This final question before we go, I know we're 5 minutes over already, but this is from Sergeant McGreevy. He wants to know, which one of you has the stronger stash?
Well, I think mine's more well established. I'm sure that all the hairs on my face have been on my face for the last 2.5 years. So it took me a long time to get here, and luckily I don't have to shave it at all because it doesn't grow. But I don't know. I'm going to vote for me, but I'll let you answer your portion of that, Mike.
I don't have much of a fighting chance. I'm pretty much new to the stash game, but the motor officers typically will do the historic Movember movement. The motor officers, for some reason, always do Stashtober, and I think I'm just getting ready for it. I think I'm just early to the game, So Sarge, I hope you vote for me. Mine has got a strong game going on here.
All right, and I'm just gonna, one just came in. We do have a bit of a lag on the comments based on when we're talking and when the comments come in. But there's one more here. I don't know if you guys can answer it. You can definitely point people in the right direction. This one, for instance, from Regina is traffic on Victoria between Victoria and Channel Islands is an all-day speedway. Are there any plans to address the noise and the speeding there? Is that, if somebody has an issue like that, would they contact our traffic sergeants here?
They can contact, a traffic sergeant. They can even reach out to the general 805-385-7600. That's our general police line, and ask to get transferred to the traffic office or traffic unit. And usually one of us will answer the phone. We have traffic investigators who are inside of the office, and so they can answer the phone. Yeah, we can definitely respond to those types of, we call them traffic complaints. Generally that area is our District 2. So generally one of our motor officers assigned to District 2 will be in charge of handling that. However, there's times that we frequently head out there as a unit or, multiple motorcycle officers to do the enforcement. I would encourage you, if you're going to provide a traffic complaint such as vehicle speeding or, a lot of noise, really try to give us a, day of the week. If there's multiple days of the week, Monday through Friday, give it that to us, but also a time range as well, because there's sometimes we get complaints that unfortunately don't have a lot of information to them. So we can't, obviously be out there 24 hours a day. So we'd like to address the issue when possible.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much. I'm sorry we went 8 minutes over here, but it was just such good stuff. And I hope you guys will come back and join us again because the questions are still rolling in. So if there's any questions here that we didn't address, hopefully we can get to them. I know Officer Wood's great on social media, and we'll try and do our best. But thank you guys so much for being here live with us, interacting with us. Thank you, Officer Wood. Thank you, Officer Songer, for
Thank you for having us.
Great chat, so much great information, and your personalities are all right.
They're okay. I want to give a special shout out though to some junior crime fighters that I saw, Miss Ava, Grayson, and Mama Joan. Some great big shout out to you guys today. Thank you so much for listening and paying attention to us for the last 38 minutes.
Yes. And Officer Songer, do you have any shout outs before we go?
I shout out to you, Oxnard. Drive safe and be safe.
And I'll say, hi, Mom. Hi, Grandma. Be safe out there, Oxnard. Have a great night, and we'll talk to you next week. Actually, let me just plug next week. Next week, we're talking to our senior fraud detective, Erica Escalante. So if you have any questions about scams or frauds that are happening currently or you've dealt with before, be sure to join us next week as we do a live question and answer with senior fraud detective, Erica Escalante. Thank you guys again, and have a great night.
Drive safe.